Welcome to Lesson 4, Functions. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at defining your own custom functions for the first time. Of course, so far we've used a number of built-in functions that are part of Python so that we could perform common tasks. However, not every task you'll ever want to perform will already be defined, although with the wide variety of Python standard libraries and the literally thousands of other open source libraries that are out there, many of the things you'll want to do have already been defined, but you will frequently need to create your own custom functions as well. We're going to talk more about importing and using Python standard library modules, and the import capabilities that we show will apply not only to the Python standard library but other open source libraries as well. We'll talk in more detail now about passing data between functions. We'll introduce how to do random number generation and use that to perform simulation techniques. We'll also introduce another of Python's built-in data structures. So we've already taken a look at two different sequence types: strings, which are sequences of characters, and lists, which are sequences of values in a, so far as we know, a square bracketed, comma delimited list of values. And we'll talk more about lists and tuples in the next chapter, but here we'll introduce the basic concept of a tuple, which is simply a collection of items that are related to one another, and they're not necessarily of the same type. The same technically is true of a list, but in a list, more commonly than not, we will have a bunch of values of the same type, whereas in a tuple we just have a bunch of related items. And one of the things that we do with tuples is put values into them, which is known as packing the tuple. And another thing we commonly do with tuples is take values out of them, which is known as unpacking a tuple. Now, once we've introduced the basic concept of tuples, we're going to show you that you can use that as a way to allow functions to return more than one value at a time in Python. We'll continue with a discussion of scope in Python, and basically we're going to talk about where identifiers can be used within your program. Then we'll take a look at some additional function topics, such as creating your own functions with default parameter values, where you say in advance, if this particular parameter is not provided, this is the value that should be used. We'll also talk more about keyword arguments and calling functions with keyword arguments. We saw a couple of keyword arguments so far in the context of the print function. In particular, we saw the end and sep keyword arguments, so we'll talk more about that concept. We'll also demonstrate how to create a function that receives any number of arguments. And finally, we'll finish up before the Intro to Data Science section with a discussion of methods. Methods are simply functions that belong to specific objects. So we'll talk about how to invoke methods on objects and demonstrate a couple of snippets doing that.